Vance, I'm tired of the swings. Little Maddie whined as she tugged on his sleeve, her pigtails bouncing with every stomp of her pink sneakers. Vance Harlow glanced down from his phone, slid it into his pocket, and crouched to her eye level. "Okay, what do you want to do next, Peanut?" "Slide," she said, already taking off toward the jungle gym like a rocket. He followed with a chuckle, hands in the pockets of his tailored navy coat. The early spring air was cool, but the sun was out, and Maddie's laugh was worth every second he wasn't in a boardroom. Taking care of his niece for the weekend wasn't exactly on his packed calendar, but when his sister called in a panic about a last-minute work trip, he dropped everything. Multi-million-dollar deals could wait. He leaned against the metal railing near the playground and watched Maddie climb the ladder. For the first time in weeks, he felt peaceful, no ringing phones, no meetings, just the sound of kids laughing and the smell of trees and grass. Then he heard a voice. "No, no, hold on, Marcus, not the mud. Oh, come on." Vance turned just in time to see a little boy covered in dirt shoes, pants, even his cheeks sprint past him, giggling like he'd just discovered the cure to boredom. A woman, completely frazzled and holding a sippy cup in one hand and a crushed granola bar in the other, chased after him. "Marcus," she called, eyes wide, curls bouncing as she ran. "Stop." "You're not a pig." The boy didn't stop, but Vance stepped forward just in time, scooping the toddler into his arms with practiced ease. "Gotcha," he said, lifting the boy off the ground and handing him over. The woman skidded to a stop in front of him, breathless. "Oh my God," she gasped. "Thank you, he's like a mud-seeking missile today." Vance grinned, his gaze locking with hers. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes warm brown and alive with exhaustion and something else, something real. "No problem," he said. "I'm Vance." She shifted Marcus to her hip, brushing hair from her face with her free hand. Jessa Blake, that's my son, obviously." "Obviously," he teased, glancing at the mud-covered child now happily chewing on the granola bar wrapper. Jessa laughed. "He's usually more." "Well, no, he's always like this." Maddie ran up then, covered in slide static and curiosity. "Who's that?" "This is Jessa and her son, Marcus," Vance said, crouching beside Maddie. "Jessa, this is my niece, Maddie." "Hi," Maddie said, scrunching her nose at Marcus. "He's dirty." "Takes after his dad," Jessa muttered, then seemed to catch herself. "I mean, he's just a handful," Vance smiled. "Looks like we both got roped into babysitting duty." Jessa arched a brow. "You look a little too polished for park duty, let me guess." "Finance, real estate development," he said easily. She gave him a mock look of horror. "Oh no, not another condo king," he laughed. "Guilty, but I left the crown at home today." They both watched their kids well, his niece and her son dart off toward the sandbox. "You live around here?" he asked, casually brushing some dirt off his coat. "Yeah, just moved back actually, needed to be closer to my mom. I'm still figuring things out," he nodded. "Divorced, never married," she said, not flinching. "You, never married either," he replied. "I don't usually hang out at parks, but Maddie's mom needed a last-minute favor." "Well, lucky for me," Jessa said, then looked embarrassed. "I mean lucky for Marcus, that you caught him." He tilted his head. "Was that almost flirting, Jessa Blake?" She bit her lip, eyes dancing. "Depends." "Do you flirt back?" He grinned. "Depends. Are you free for coffee?" She blinked. "Wait, like now?" He looked at his watch, then at the kids. "There's a cafe right across the street with outdoor seating. I'll buy you a latte if you let me rinse the mud off your kid first." Jessa laughed. "Deal." They packed up the kids, Marcus still sticky, Maddie chattering nonstop, and crossed to the cafe. Vance ordered drinks and a ridiculous number of pastries, waving away Jessa's attempt to pay. "Don't worry," he said smoothly. "I've got it." "Are you always this smooth?" she asked as they settled at a table. He shrugged. "Only when I'm trying to impress someone." She raised a brow. "So, you're trying to impress me? Is it working?" She paused. "Maybe." The kids were busy with chocolate croissants and Vance leaned in slightly. "You know what's strange?" "What?" "I didn't plan on being here today. I had a meeting with a potential investor, canceled at last minute because Maddie needed me." Jessa's expression softened. "And now you're here, sitting in a park cafe covered in toddler crumbs." "I'm not complaining," he said, looking at her. "You?" She smiled. "Not one bit." They talked for over an hour, about her job as a freelance graphic designer, her move back to the city, her dreams of opening her own studio. Vance listened, genuinely interested, something rare for a man used to being the one doing all the talking. She didn't care about his watch or his car or his net worth, none of which he mentioned. Eventually, the kids grew restless and Jessa stood. I should get him home. Nap time or the world burns, Vance smiled. Fair enough, she hesitated, then reached into her purse. Here, my number. He took the napkin she'd scribbled on, folding it carefully. I'd like to see you again, he said, voice low. She looked up at him. I'd like that too. As she walked away, Marcus waving goodbye with sticky fingers, Vance felt something he hadn't felt in years, hope. Real, crashing, chest-thudding hope, and he hadn't even told her he was a millionaire yet, but he would. Because this wasn't just some cute meet cute in the park. It was the start of something real. The following Thursday, Vance stood outside a modest red brick building with ivy curling around the window frames. He checked the address again, then glanced at the paper bag in his hand, the scent of fresh pastries escaping through the folded top. He hadn't planned on dropping by unannounced, but Jessa had mentioned her work from home Thursdays, and after a week of board meetings and investment calls, he needed a sliver of reality that didn't involve profit margins or acquisitions. A piano melody drifted from one of the open windows above, faint but clear. He tapped the buzzer. Jessa opened the door herself, barefoot in worn jeans and a faded blue t-shirt with a paint smudge near the hem. A pencil was tucked behind her ear and her brows lifted in surprise the moment she saw him. Vance, I brought bribes, he said, holding up the bag, and zero expectations, just figured you might want a break. She tilted her head. You're lucky I didn't have a deadline today. Or that Marcus isn't in the middle of one of his Lego tornadoes. Is that a yes? She stepped aside and gestured into the hallway. It's a cautious yes. He followed her up the stairs, passing framed sketches of animals and cityscapes that felt too personal to be store-bought. Her apartment was small but warm, with sunlight pouring through the sheer curtains and a stack of children's books toppling off the end of the couch. Marcus was on the floor, completely absorbed in lining up toy cars. Hey, buddy, Vance said. Marcus glanced up, then returned to his vehicles without comment. Don't take it personally, Jessa said. He's in his silent concentration phase. It usually ends with a crash. Vance set the bag on the dining table and pulled out 2 chocolate croissants and a small container of fruit. Thought you might need fuel. She sat across from him, tearing off a piece with her fingers. You always feed people when you show up unannounced, only when I'm trying to see someone again without making it weird. She arched a brow. So this is you not being weird, painfully trying. For a minute, the only sound was the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional engine noise from Marcus's toy collection. Then Jessa leaned back in her chair, her expression shifting. Why'd you really come by? He didn't pretend to misunderstand. I haven't stopped thinking about you. That morning at the park, something about it felt different. Her fingers paused mid-twist on a napkin. Different how? I don't usually feel like I can breathe around people. You're not trying to impress me, you're just yourself. She studied him, then looked down at her hands. That's not always an asset. It is to me. She stood suddenly and walked to the window, arms crossed. You know, I Googled you after the park. I wasn't going to. But I did. He stood, but didn't approach. And she turned around. You own half of downtown. Not quite, maybe a third. You're being flippant, she said. But you didn't tell me any of that, not your company. Not the fact that your name's on the side of a building I walk past every day. Why hide it? I didn't want it to be the first thing you saw. But it's still there in the background, he nodded slowly. I won't apologize for what I've built, but I didn't want that to be the only version of me you knew. Jessa walked back over, her bare feet silent against the wood floor. So what do you want me to know? That I'm not just the guy with the penthouse and the impossible schedule. I'm the guy who canceled a merger meeting because my niece had a meltdown over losing her stuffed elephant. I'm the guy who stood in a grocery aisle for 10 minutes trying to figure out which rice cakes are acceptable for toddlers. And I'm the guy who hasn't stopped thinking about how your laugh sounds when you're trying to cover it. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she bent down and picked up one of Marcus's cars, rolling it between her palms. "I've had people walk out because I wasn't put together enough," she said quietly. "Because I didn't have time to be polished or patient or perfect. I don't do country clubs. I don't wear heels unless someone's getting married, and I'm still learning how to be a mom and a person at the same time. If you're looking for something curated, I'm not that." "I'm not looking for curated," he said. "I'm looking for real." "And I think you are." Her eyes searched his face for a long moment, then she nodded once. "Okay, okay, you can stay," she said, "but you're on Lego duty." He looked at Marcus, who had now begun building a precarious tower of cars on top of a cereal box. "Deal?" That afternoon passed in a blur of laughter and crumbs. Marcus warmed up, eventually draping himself across Vance's lap with a juice box in hand. Jessa sat on the floor beside them, sketching something in a spiral notebook with fast, confident strokes she didn't explain. Vance didn't need her to. He left just after sunset, the sky outside streaked in orange and lavender. Jessa walked him to the door. "Thanks for coming," she said, arms folded across her chest. Even if it was unexpected, he stepped closer. "I'd like to do it again." "Next time, maybe I'll cook." Her eyes narrowed. "You cook, not well, but with enough wine, anything tastes good." She laughed softly, and the sound lingered in the hallway even after the door closed behind him. Vance walked to his car without checking his messages. He didn't need a calendar alert to know he'd just made the best investment of his life. Rain tapped steadily against the windows of Vance's penthouse, turning the skyline into a watercolor blur of silver and shadow. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling glass, phone pressed to his ear as Maddie played silently behind him with a stack of puzzles he'd picked up that morning. "No, I don't want to reschedule the foundation meeting again," he said evenly. "Move the dinner with the investors." "I'll take the call from home." "Yes, I said home." He ended the call and dropped the phone onto the marble countertop. A long breath passed through his chest before he turned toward Maddie, who looked up at him with a puzzled expression. "You okay, Vance?" He nodded. "Just work things." She pointed toward the clock. "Is Jessa coming?" He checked the time. "Almost 6. She'd called earlier to say she and Marcus would be late, something about a last-minute delivery of art supplies. Still, he'd lit the fireplace, ordered dinner from a place she'd mentioned liking, and even had a new coloring book waiting on the coffee table. "She'll be here soon," he said, crouching beside her. "Want to help me set up the plates?" Maddie's eyes lit up. "Can I put the napkins on like you showed me last time?" "Absolutely." By the time the doorbell rang, Maddie had folded each cloth napkin into what she claimed were fancy fans, and Vance had just finished pouring juice into small glasses shaped like cartoon animals. He opened the door to find Jessa juggling an umbrella, her bag, and Marcus, who was dressed in a fire truck onesie and clinging to her shoulder mid-yawn. "Sorry we're late," she said, brushing wet curls from her forehead. Apparently, the art supply store closes at 5 on Fridays, and Marcus had a meltdown over not getting red glitter paint. Vance stepped aside and took her bag without a word. "Come in." "You both look like you've been chased by a monsoon." Jessa toed off her boots, then walked toward the living room. "Did you do all this?" "I had help," he said, nodding toward Maddie, who had taken Marcus by the hand and was showing him her latest dinosaur puzzle. Jessa lowered herself onto the couch, stretching her arms over her head. "Your place smells like garlic and rosemary. I think I love you." He paused, then gave a half smile. "That's a dangerous thing to say, Blake." She looked at him, eyes narrowing with amusement. "Dangerous how? I might take it seriously." Her lips parted slightly, but before she could answer, Marcus called out, "Mama, look, dinosaurs eating the tree. Very realistic," she called back, then looked at Vance again. "I think I'm too tired to flirt properly." "Good," he said, walking to her. "Then I won't have to pretend I'm not completely gone for you." She blinked, but said nothing. Instead, she stood and followed him to the table where dinner was already plated. They sat across from each other as the kids giggled and spilled bits of pasta onto the floor. Midway through dinner, Jessa set down her fork and leaned her elbow on the table. "Can I ask you something? Anything." "Why haven't you invited me to anything? Public?" He looked at her, surprised. You mean events? I know you go to them. Black tie things, galas, openings. You're in the papers more than most politicians, but since we started seeing each other, it's been dinners like this, quiet nights, just us. He folded his hands. You think I'm hiding you? I don't know what to think, she said honestly. It's not about fancy parties, but it feels like you're keeping this contained. He looked at the children, then back at her. I didn't want to throw you into that world before you were ready. You mean before you were ready, she said, not accusing, just observant. He didn't deny it. I've spent most of my adult life around people who want something from me. Money, access, a piece of my name, you. You didn't want anything. I wasn't sure if bringing you into that world would ruin what this is. She nodded slowly. I understand that, but if I'm going to be part of your life, I can't stay in a corner of it. You're not, he said. Not anymore. He stood and walked into the adjoining room, returning a moment later with a sleek velvet box, small and square. I was going to wait, he said, setting it in front of her, but maybe now is better. She stared at the box. Vance. Don't worry, he said quickly. It's not a ring. She opened the box to find a delicate gold bracelet, thin and elegant, with a single charm shaped like a pencil. Her fingers trembled slightly as she touched it. I had it made, he said. It reminded me of you, strong, focused, creative. And completely one of a kind, her eyes met his. You remembered I sketch with pencils. I remember everything. She reached across the table and took his hand. Okay, she said softly. Then maybe next time I'll be your plus one, he leaned in. Next Friday, charity auction, black tie. I'll send a car. I don't own anything black tie. I already made an appointment at a boutique tomorrow, he said. They'll have everything ready in your size, you just have to show up. Her mouth dropped open. You did that before this conversation? I was hoping you'd say yes. She shook her head, laughing under her breath. You really don't do anything small. I don't do you small either, he said. You're the first thing in a long time that feels permanent. She glanced at Marcus, who was now curled up beside Maddie with his head on her lap. We come with complications. So do I, he said, but I think we fit. She looked up at him, something unspoken passing between them. Yeah. I think we do. The rain had stopped by the time he walked them downstairs. Marcus was asleep in her arms, his tiny hand curled into the fabric of her jacket. At the door, she turned. Vance? Yeah, thank you for not treating me like a novelty. He stepped closer, one hand bracing the doorframe beside her. You're not a novelty. You're the one thing I didn't know I needed. She leaned in, kissed his cheek, and whispered, Then don't let this go. He watched them walk down the steps and into the waiting car, heart thudding with a certainty he hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about timing anymore. It was about choice, and he was choosing her. Every time, the ballroom shimmered like a dream stitched in gold. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above polished marble, and the hum of quiet conversations floated over the soft strains of a live quartet. Vance adjusted the cuff of his tuxedo, though his gaze never left the woman descending the grand staircase. Jessa's gown was midnight blue, sleek and off the shoulder, with a single silver clasp at her waist. Her curls had been swept into an elegant twist, strands escaping just enough to soften the look. She paused halfway down, eyes scanning the crowd until they found him. He didn't move, didn't breathe. For a man who'd closed deals worth millions, he'd never felt pressure like this. When she reached him, her voice was low. You clean up all right. Understatement, he murmured, offering his arm. You look like the person every poem's been trying to describe. She gave a soft laugh, not the tired kind he remembered from the park, but something richer. Let's not trip in front of your board members. They're not why I'm here, he said, leading her into the room. He introduced her only once to the event host, and even then, he kept his hand on the small of her back. She didn't ask questions about who was who or what deal had funded which wing of the museum they were standing in. She didn't need to pretend. Instead, she asked about the paintings, the local artists, and the children's art program the auction would support. When a waiter passed with champagne, she took a glass and turned to him. I didn't realize how much I missed being part of something bigger than just getting through the day, she said, her voice quiet but firm. He studied her. You could be if you wanted. That studio idea you mentioned, there are spaces downtown. I know people who'd back it. I don't want handouts. It would be belief, he said. And after what I've seen you create, I'd be investing in a sure thing. She tilted her head. You're serious. I'm always serious about things that matter. Their conversation was interrupted when a man in his 60s approached, clapping Vance on the shoulder. Didn't expect to see you tonight, he said. Thought you'd be off chasing that Dubai project. Some things take priority, Vance replied. This is Jessa Blake. She's an artist and a designer, and the reason I've stopped thinking about skyscrapers long enough to remember what daylight looks like. The man chuckled. Well, if she's the one who got you out of the office, she's a miracle worker. After he left, Jessa leaned close. What's in Dubai? Something I turned down this week, he said. It would have moved me out there for 6 months, but I've got something better here. Her expression shifted. Are you sure? That's a huge opportunity. I've spent years chasing the next win, the next zero on a contract, but those things don't hold your hand on rainy mornings. They don't fall asleep on your shoulder while watching cartoons. They don't look at you like you're worth more than your portfolio. She looked away for a moment, then back. I didn't know you were considering leaving. I was, he said. Until I realized I'd be walking away from the only thing that ever felt like home. They moved to the balcony as the auction began inside. The city glittered below them, lights stretching into the horizon. Jessa stepped to the edge, arms resting on the stone railing. You make it sound easy, she said. Like choosing me over everything else is obvious. It's not easy, he said, stepping beside her, but it's right, and I've built enough towers to know the foundation matters more than the view. She turned toward him. What about Marcus? I want to be there, he said. Not just for you, for him. I want to be someone he trusts, someone he can count on. Her eyes glistened in the city light. He asks about you every morning. Then maybe he deserves more than just a visitor. She blinked, surprised. What are you saying? I'm saying I bought the studio space. Lease is signed, it's yours. You start when you're ready. And I hired someone full-time to help with Maddie when she's with me, so you never have to feel like you're navigating 2 lives alone. I didn't ask for that. You didn't have to, he said. I want every version of your life to feel like it fits with mine. No overlap, no compromise, just harmony. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. It's too much. No, he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. This is. He pulled out a small velvet pouch and placed it in her palm. She opened it to reveal a delicate necklace, silver with 2 charms. One was a tiny sketch pad. The other, a miniature toy car. She stared at it, speechless. I wanted you to see what this looks like, he said. You, me, Maddie, Marcus, a family, not just in theory. She didn't speak for a long time. Then finally her voice was steady. I want that too. He stepped closer. Then let's make it real. The moment hung between them, fragile and enormous, and then she reached up, fastened the necklace around her throat, and nodded. Yes, she whispered. Let's. They returned to the ballroom just as the final bid closed. Applause rose around them, but Vance didn't hear it. He only saw her standing beside him, eyes bright, future unwritten and full of promise. Later that night, with the city quiet and the children sleeping in adjoining rooms, Jessa curled against him on the couch. The fireplace flickered low, casting soft shadows across the room. You really weren't expecting any of this, were you? She asked. He laughed quietly, brushing a kiss against her temple. I took my niece to the park, that's all I planned for. And then you dropped into my life like a storm I didn't know I needed. You're not scared. I've had everything money could buy, he said, but this is the first thing that feels like mine. Jessa rested her head on his chest, her fingers laced with his. And outside, the city kept moving, but for the first time, Vance didn't feel like he had to move with it. He was exactly where he was meant to be. The first snow of the season drifted past the tall windows of Vance's lakeside home, the kind of snow that silenced the world. Inside, the fire crackled softly, and the scent of nutmeg and cloves lingered from the hot cider Jessa had poured earlier. Marcus was in the den with Maddie, constructing what appeared to be a blanket fort stronghold, and Jessa sat curled in an armchair, sketchpad balanced on her knee, lips pressed together in concentration. Vance leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, watching her. She hadn't noticed him, yet not fully. Her pencil moved with purpose, but her brow furrowed slightly, and he could tell she was stuck on a detail. She'd always been that way, locked in until she got something exactly the way she envisioned it. "You're drawing again," he said finally, his voice low. She looked up, eyes flicking toward him with a blink of surprise. "I never really stopped, but lately it's different. It's not just for clients anymore, it's for me." He walked over, glanced at the page. It was a storefront, her storefront, the one she'd signed the lease for just 2 weeks ago. "You have a name yet, Kindred," she said, the words soft and certain, "for all the pieces that found each other when they weren't supposed to." He touched the back of her chair. "It suits you." She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his without breaking her gaze. "I'm scared." "Of what? What if it's too much?" she whispered. "The studio, the kids, us. What if I mess it up?" "You won't," he said. "And if you do, we'll clean it up together." "I don't want to lose this." "You won't." He knelt beside her, brushing his thumb along her knuckles. "Do you know how many risks I've taken in my life? How many times I bet everything on a gamble?" She gave a half laugh. "I'm not a gamble." "No," he said, his voice lower now. "You're the certainty I never thought I'd find." Her eyes welled, but she didn't look away. "You mean that? Every moment I've lived before you led me here, and I'd make every choice again if it brought me back to this." She set the sketchpad down and leaned forward, her forehead pressed to his. "You make it hard to breathe sometimes. Then let me be the reason you exhale." Later that evening, after the kids had collapsed in a tangle of pillows and blankets under their fort, Maddie, still holding her flashlight like a scepter, and Marcus snoring with a stuffed bear tucked under his chin, Jessa and Vance stood in the kitchen, bare feet grazing the warm tile floor. He poured the last of the wine and she rested her head on his shoulder. "I never imagined this," she said, fingers tracing the edge of her glass. "Not the house or the view or this ridiculous calm. You built it with me," he said. "Brick by brick." She turned toward him, her expression unreadable for a moment. "There's something I want to ask you. Anything? Would you come with me to the ribbon cutting when the studio opens?" His brow furrowed. "Of course I will." "Why would you?" "I want people to know," she said, eyes searching his. "That you're not just funding it, you're part of it, part of me. You don't have to prove anything." "I'm not," she said. "I just want the world to see what I see when I look at you." He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "Then I'll be there, front row, telling everyone I'm the luckiest man alive." They stood in silence, the kind of silence that only came when two people no longer needed words. 3 days later, the studio opened with a quiet crowd gathered beneath strings of warm lights. The space was airy and modern, filled with her work and the work of local artists she'd invited into the collective. Jessa wore a simple cream dress and flats, her hair loose around her shoulders. Marcus ran in circles near the back wall, supervised by Vance's newly hired assistant, while Maddie helped hand out flyers with all the seriousness of a professional. When she stepped up to the mic, her voice wavered only once. "This place isn't just a dream fulfilled, it's a beginning. A place for people who have been told their lives have to follow a certain path. This is for the detours, the unexpected turns, and the people who make those turns feel like home again." After the applause, Jessa turned to Vance. He hadn't moved from his place beside the front window, arms crossed, watching her like she was the only thing in the room. "You still sure?" she asked quietly, now more than ever. That night back at the lake house, Jessa found a letter waiting for her in the bedroom. It wasn't folded or hidden, just resting on the pillow beside hers. She opened it, her fingers trembling slightly. "Jessa, you once said you didn't want to be part of someone's curated life. That you needed space to be messy, real, unfinished. I don't want perfect, I want you. The woman who draws at midnight, who burns pancakes and laughs about it, who raised a beautiful son with strength and grace. The woman who made me remember what it feels like to be whole. So here's what I'm asking. Let's stop waiting for the next milestone. Let's stop measuring time in beginnings and endings. Let's just live. Together. You, me, Marcus, Maddie, one roof, one life, I love you. Not in the way that fades or falters, but in the way that builds, in the way that stays. Yours, V. She turned to find him leaning against the doorframe, his tie loose, his eyes unreadable. "You're not proposing, are you?" she asked, voice thick. "No," he said, "not yet, but I'm asking you to move in, all the way, no more two addresses. No more overnight bags. And when the time comes," she asked, stepping toward him, "I'll ask," he said, "but not with a grand gesture, just a quiet one, you'll know when." She nodded, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Then yes, to all of it. They moved in together the following week. The kids adjusted faster than anyone expected. Marcus commandeered the guest room for his growing collection of plastic dinosaurs, and Maddie declared the kitchen island her art zone. Life didn't soften because they were in love. There were still tantrums and deadlines and sleepless nights. But now, there was laughter echoing down the hallway and slow dances in the kitchen while dinner burned, and tiny feet climbing into their bed in the middle of the night. On a quiet morning months later, Jessa stepped onto the back deck wrapped in one of Vance's shirts. He was already there, coffee in hand, watching the lake shimmer under the rising sun. Without a word, she slid her arms around his waist from behind. He covered her hands with his and said, "You're sure this is what you want?" She kissed his shoulder. "This is more than I ever knew I could have." He turned, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Then let's make the rest of our life look just like this." And it did.